The night rain poured relentlessly, each droplet echoing like a warning she refused to hear. Emily gripped the steering wheel as her breath fogged the glass, her heart racing faster than the wipers struggling to clear the storm. She had followed Daniel's car out of suspicion that gnawed like a sharp blade, praying she was wrong yet fearing the truth she already felt in her chest. When the red lights blinked at the intersection, her world slowed, and she saw him. Daniel stepped out, his hand slipping into Sarah's with practiced ease, their laughter cutting through the rain like a cruel melody. Emily whispered, "No, this can't be," her voice trembling, her chest hollowing as if her soul had been torn away. The betrayal unfolded in slow motion, her trust shattering like fragile glass against the wet pavement. It was not just an affair she witnessed, but the collapse of her future, her heart, and everything she once believed unbreakable. Emily's knuckles whitened as she clenched the wheel, every nerve in her body screaming denial. The rain blurred the lines between the outside storm and the storm tearing through her heart. She remembered Daniel's vows, his promises of forever, and the way his voice once soothed her fears. Now those words echoed as cruel lies, slicing deeper with each memory. She wanted to run to him, to demand answers, but fear chained her in place. If she stepped out, she knew the truth would become unshakable. Her chest burned as her breath faltered, her body trembling with rage and heartbreak. "Why, Daniel?" she whispered, voice breaking in the hollow space of the car. The betrayal sat heavy in her chest, pressing down until it hurt to breathe, until the world itself seemed to collapse into nothing but despair. Inside the car, Emily's sobs turned sharp, like glass breaking in her throat. She slammed her fist against the steering wheel, the horn echoing through the storm before being swallowed by the night. The image of Daniel's hand clasped with Sarah's burned into her mind, searing her heart with every beat. She felt powerless, betrayed, yet anger flickered in her eyes, like embers refusing to die. She whispered his name again, this time not with grief but with fury, the taste of betrayal bitter on her tongue. Her reflection in the rearview mirror revealed a woman she no longer recognized, her eyes hollow, her face streaked with rain and tears. In that moment, Emily knew her world had changed forever. Outside, Daniel's laughter rose above the storm, careless and cruel in its ease. Emily pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, the sound piercing through her like a blade. He had once whispered promises of love into her ear, yet here he was, sharing laughter with another as if Emily never existed. Her chest heaved as memories collided with reality, each one unraveling what she believed their life had been. She wanted to scream, to burst out of the car and tear the illusion apart, but the weight of betrayal held her in place. Her world spun around the sound of his laughter, cruelly mocking the years she had devoted to him. Emily closed her eyes, pressing her trembling hands over her mouth to stifle the sobs clawing out of her chest. The sound of Daniel's voice, once a balm, now echoed like poison in her ears. She tried to summon strength, but her body felt hollow, as though betrayal had drained every ounce of her being. In the silence of her car, only the storm bore witness to her unraveling. Her tears blurred everything until she saw nothing but darkness. She leaned back, sinking into the seat, her breath uneven, her eyes vacant. In that moment, the life she once cherished died quietly inside her. Emily sat at her kitchen table, the storm outside replaced by an eerie morning silence that felt heavier than thunder. She traced the rim of her coffee cup, her hands trembling with exhaustion from a sleepless night haunted by betrayal. Daniel's laughter with Sarah replayed endlessly in her head, every echo striking her like a cruel hammer shattering her fragile spirit. She whispered his name, as if the sound alone could bring back the man she thought she knew. The framed wedding photo across the room mocked her, its smiling faces now ghostly lies carved into glass. She thought of the years she sacrificed, the dreams she buried for him, the trust she gave freely like a gift he burned. Emily asked aloud, "Was I never enough?" Her voice cracked as tears fell into her untouched coffee. The morning light was soft but merciless, showing her not peace but the ruins of the life she thought unshakable. Emily's thoughts wandered to her sacrifices, the nights she stayed awake tending to Daniel's plans, the dreams she buried to make his ambitions possible. She remembered when love had been their anchor, steady and secure, a promise she believed eternal. Now those memories stung like salt on fresh wounds, each one a reminder of what she had given and what he had destroyed. She pressed her palm against her chest as if holding her heart together, whispering, "I gave you everything, Daniel." The silence around her was deafening, amplifying the ache in her voice. Her reflection in the window showed a woman drained of light, someone who no longer resembled the hopeful bride she once was. The past and present clashed brutally, leaving her with nothing but the hollow question of whether her love had ever been enough for him. Later, Emily sat with Olivia, her closest friend, the only person she trusted enough to speak aloud her torment. Olivia listened quietly, her hand resting gently over Emily's trembling fingers. Emily's voice cracked as she confessed the truth of what she had seen, each word dragging the pain back into her chest. "They were together, Olivia. As if I never existed," she said, tears welling in her eyes. Olivia's own face twisted with anger and sympathy, her silence heavy but supportive. Emily clung to her friend's presence, though even comfort could not undo the unraveling of her world. The betrayal still pressed like iron against her ribs, unrelenting, suffocating. She wanted answers, closure, something more than silence, yet all she found was Olivia's tender grip, reminding her she was not completely alone. That night, Emily stood before her bedroom mirror, staring into eyes she no longer recognized. Her reflection mocked her with hollow eyes and a face carved by grief. She pulled Daniel's shirt from the drawer, clutching it to her chest before letting it fall like dead weight to the floor. The fabric smelled faintly of him, each thread a cruel reminder of the love she once believed unbreakable. Her breath came ragged, her chest heavy as she whispered, "You betrayed me." The room seemed to close in on her, walls echoing with memories of laughter and promises that no longer belonged to her. She dug her nails into her palms, desperate to feel something other than pain. But the ache clung to her, raw and endless, as if it would never let her go. Emily's phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Her hand shook as she reached for it, the glow of the screen casting shadows on her face. It was a message from Mark, Daniel's brother, whose words chilled her veins. "We need to talk. There are things you don't know." Her pulse quickened, fear and dread tangling inside her chest. She whispered his name, her voice sharp with suspicion. What could he mean? Had betrayal stretched beyond Sarah, beyond Daniel, reaching even deeper into her life? She gripped the phone tighter, her body rigid as she realized she might not yet know the full truth. A secret darker than what she had already seen lurked at the edge of her world, waiting to strike again. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, her phone glowing in the darkness as her trembling hands scrolled through messages she was never meant to see. The words between Daniel and Sarah burned like fire on her skin, their laughter and promises of a future together etched in cruel clarity. Every line she read twisted deeper, unraveling what little strength she had left. She whispered, "How long?" as her chest heaved, her tears falling onto the glowing screen. Her heart screamed to throw the phone to smash it, yet her hands clung as though proof was needed to confirm her worst fear. Each word was another dagger, each promise another lie. She pressed her hand against her mouth to silence a sob, but it was too late. Her world had already collapsed beyond repair. The next morning, Emily stumbled into the kitchen, her eyes swollen, her face pale. She clutched the phone like a cursed object, unable to let go of the evidence it held. Her stomach twisted as she replayed the words Daniel had written, his affection for Sarah so vivid it eclipsed every promise he had made to her. She whispered to herself, "I was nothing," as the air caught in her throat. Anger and despair warred within her, each emotion clawing for dominance. She wanted to scream, to rage, to break everything around her, yet exhaustion pinned her in place. Her reflection in the steel kettle showed a woman hollowed by betrayal, someone she barely recognized. The silence was suffocating, as if the house itself mourned with her. Later, Daniel returned home, the weight of Emily's gaze cutting into him the moment he entered. She held the phone out, her hand shaking as tears welled in her eyes. "How could you?" she asked, her voice sharp with pain. Daniel froze, his confident mask slipping for only a moment before he forced a calm smile, muttering excuses. His words were hollow, their tone dismissive, his eyes shifting away as if the truth could vanish if unspoken. Emily's fury rose like fire, her voice trembling as she demanded answers he refused to give. The silence between them screamed louder than his denials, the lies clinging to him like a shadow he couldn't shake. Emily later confided in Olivia again, her voice shaking as she recounted Daniel's hollow lies. Olivia sat silently, torn between fury at Daniel and fear for Emily's unraveling spirit. She grasped Emily's hand, whispering, "You don't deserve this." Yet Emily could see the hesitation in her eyes, the weight of knowing Daniel too well. Olivia's loyalty was divided, and though her support was heartfelt, her silence at times revealed her own conflict. Emily felt both grateful and betrayed, comforted and yet abandoned, as though even her closest ally was slipping from her grasp. The betrayal spread like poison, reaching even those she leaned on for strength. That night, Emily lay curled on the floor beside her bed, her chest heaving with sobs that shook the silence. The messages replayed in her head, the image of Daniel's laughter, echoing louder with each breath. Her hands clutched the blanket like a lifeline, but the fabric gave no comfort. She whispered, "I can't do this," her voice muffled as she pressed her face into the fabric. Her tears soaked the floor beneath her, her body trembling until exhaustion pulled her into a hollow, restless sleep. The betrayal had stripped her to the core, leaving nothing but a broken shell of the woman she once was. Emily's phone buzzed again, the vibration shattering the stillness of the night. It was Mark, Daniel's brother, his voice urgent when she answered. "Emily, there's something you need to know." His tone carried a weight that chilled her veins, heavier than the storm she had endured. She listened, breathless, as he revealed that Daniel's betrayal went further than she imagined. It wasn't just Sarah, it was years of secrets, lies layered so deep they twisted the very foundation of her marriage. Emily pressed her hand to her chest, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me before?" Mark hesitated, his silence telling her everything. He had known, but fear kept him silent. Her world tilted again, collapsing under the weight of betrayal that stretched far beyond love. It reached into family, trust, and the very fabric of her life. The following morning, Emily sat at her dining table, papers spread before her that Mark had sent, evidence of Daniel's lies. Bank records, hidden accounts, meetings that spanned years. Her trembling fingers traced the lines of proof, each revelation worse than the last. Her husband wasn't just unfaithful. He had been living another life, deceiving her in ways she couldn't fathom. Emily's breath caught as she realized the betrayal wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calculated. "How long has he been planning this?" she whispered, the sound brittle, almost broken. The sunlight spilling across the table felt harsh, exposing everything she had ignored, every truth she had been too blinded by love to see. Emily confronted Olivia with the new truth, her voice sharp with pain. "You knew something, didn't you?" she demanded. Olivia froze, her eyes widening, silence betraying her hesitation. Tears filled Emily's eyes as anger and grief collided in her chest. Olivia whispered, "I didn't want to hurt you." Emily recoiled, her breath catching as she realized betrayal had seeped into even her closest friendship. Olivia's loyalty, once unwavering, had cracked under the weight of secrecy. Emily's heart sank deeper, realizing she had been walking among shadows of truth while everyone around her carried pieces of it. "You chose silence over me," she whispered bitterly, her voice hollow. Emily paced the floor, clutching her phone as she listened again to Mark's words, the truth unraveling further. It wasn't just Sarah. There had been others, fleeting affairs that Daniel buried in silence. Each revelation struck her like a thunderclap, breaking down what little remained of her belief in him. She whispered Daniel's name with a mixture of rage and despair, her body trembling under the weight of betrayal. The air felt suffocating, her walls closing in, her trust destroyed not by one act, but by a history of deceit. She collapsed into the chair, clutching her face as if trying to hold her world together while it shattered piece by piece. That night, Emily stood at the window, the the city lights blurred by her tears. Her reflection stared back at her, hollow and broken. A woman betrayed not just by love, but by the silence of those she trusted most. She whispered, "Everything was a lie," her voice carried away by the hum of the city below. She pressed her forehead against the glass, her breath fogging the surface as sobs racked her chest. Her world had collapsed beyond what she could endure. Her marriage, her friendships, her very sense of family. The truth was no longer just Daniel's betrayal. It was a legacy of deception that had stripped her of her foundation. She closed her eyes, surrendering to the darkness pressing against her soul. Emily sat in the silence of her room, her heart pounding with a fury she had never known. Every lie, every secret, every stolen moment of truth boiled inside her chest until her breath came sharp and ragged. She clenched her fists tightly, the skin of her palms burning beneath her nails. The woman she saw in the mirror now was not the broken wife of last night. She was the storm Daniel never expected. Her voice cracked as she whispered to her reflection, "You want to destroy me." The words were quiet, but her eyes blazed with defiance. Her tears had dried, leaving only fire, only rage, only the strength born from betrayal. The night no longer belonged to Daniel. It belonged to her. The next evening, Emily confronted Daniel in the living room, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. He looked up from his seat, surprise flashing across his face before fading into annoyance. "We need to talk," she said, her words heavy with restrained fury. She threw the documents on the table, the sound sharp as a blade cutting the silence. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening as he muttered excuses. But Emily stood taller, her voice cutting through his lies. "You ruined everything we built." His smirk faltered, the mask slipping, his guilt exposed. The walls of deception began to collapse, and for the first time Daniel could not hide behind charm or silence. Emily's voice rose, her anger burning brighter than her grief. "I saw you, Daniel. I read everything. And you lied to me every single day." Daniel stood, his face hardening, his hands out as though to defend himself. "It's not what you think," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Emily stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare insult me with more lies." The air between them pulsed with fury and heartbreak, the silence between words sharper than any blade. Her chest heaved, her breath ragged, but her gaze never wavered. For the first time, Daniel was cornered, stripped of his false charm, forced to face the devastation he had caused. As the confrontation escalated, Olivia arrived, drawn by Emily's frantic call. She stepped into the room, her face etched with worry. "Emily, please calm down," she urged, but her voice trembled. Emily turned to her, eyes blazing with betrayal. "You knew," she accused, her voice trembling with fury. Olivia's face crumpled, guilt spilling across her features as she whispered, "I didn't know how to tell you." Daniel looked between them, his smirk returning, as if their division was his shield. Emily's rage exploded, her voice slicing through the room. "Both of you betrayed me." The words hung heavy, suffocating the air. The room erupted in chaos. Emily screamed, her voice raw, echoing years of pain. "You destroyed my life." Daniel's face darkened, his calm slipping into anger, his voice rising as he shouted back. Olivia tried to intervene, her voice breaking, but the weight of betrayal drowned her words. Emily's tears streamed as her rage consumed her, each sob a wound, each word a weapon. She raised her trembling hand, pointing at Daniel with a finality that shook even her. "You will never break me again." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, filled with the aftermath of shattered trust and burned bridges. It was not victory, it was survival, carved in heartbreak. The storm inside the house had ended, but silence pressed heavily against the walls. Emily sat alone on the couch, her body trembling from the weight of her outburst. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, her eyes swollen from tears. She whispered Daniel's name, but it sounded foreign on her tongue, like a word belonging to another life. The echo of his anger still lingered, but it no longer controlled her. She had faced him, faced Olivia, faced the truth. The cost was unbearable, Yet there was a strange strength growing inside her chest. She had shattered, but she was not gone. The ruins of her trust still smoldered, but through the smoke, a spark of resolve burned quietly. Later that night, Emily walked through her home, each step heavy with the memories of laughter and love that once filled the rooms. She ran her fingers across the photographs on the wall, her reflection staring back from the glass. Every frame was a reminder of the life she thought she had, now exposed as a lie. She whispered, "It's all gone," her voice breaking into the empty space. Her tears fell silently, but her steps carried her forward. The house, once warm, felt cold and unwelcoming. Yet with every breath, she felt her strength return, as though the walls themselves acknowledged her pain and her determination to endure. At dawn, Emily stepped outside, the cool air hitting her skin like a reminder that the world still moved on. She wrapped her coat tightly around herself, her breath visible in the chill. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of calm, fragile but real. She whispered softly, "I'm still here." The words steadied her, grounding her in the present. The betrayal had broken her, but it had not destroyed her spirit. She watched the sun slowly rise, painting the horizon with colors that whispered of hope. Though her heart still ached, she allowed herself to believe that healing could begin. Emily met Olivia one final time at a quiet cafe, the silence between them heavy. Olivia's eyes pleaded for forgiveness, but Emily's gaze remained steady. "You should have told me," she said softly, her voice calm but firm. Olivia's lips quivered as she whispered an apology, but Emily no longer carried the same dependence she once had. The betrayal had created scars, and though her heart still longed for the closeness they once shared, she knew it could not return. She stood, her hands trembling only slightly, and whispered, "Goodbye." The word sealed the fracture between them, leaving Olivia in quiet tears. That evening, Emily sat by the window, watching the sky turn crimson as the sun sank behind the horizon. The silence no longer felt suffocating, it felt like closure. Her chest still carried the weight of betrayal, but it no longer crushed her. She whispered, "I survived." The words were fragile but powerful, an oath spoken to herself. She had lost love, lost trust, lost pieces of her heart, but she had not lost herself. The path forward would be long, scarred by pain, yet illuminated by strength. The night came quietly, and Emily closed her eyes, ready to face what tomorrow would bring. Emily sat alone in her quiet apartment, the hum of the city outside faint against the stillness within. Her heart no longer raced with fury, but the ache remained, a reminder of the wounds still raw. She traced the rim of her glass with trembling fingers, her eyes lost in the shadows of the room. She whispered softly, "This is my life now," her voice carrying both sorrow and resignation. The silence felt heavy, yet in that weight lay an acceptance she hadn't known before. Though her heart was fractured, it beat on, reminding her that she was still alive. Survival had become her victory. Emily's phone lit up on the table, Daniel's name flashing across the screen. Her chest tightened, but she didn't move to answer. Instead, she stared at the glow, her reflection caught in the glass. Memories of his laughter, his lies, his betrayal rushed back like waves, yet she held steady. For the first time, she let the phone ring until silence returned. "You don't own me anymore," she whispered, her voice calm but firm. The weight of years fell from her shoulders, leaving her scarred but unbroken. It was not triumph, but it was freedom. Emily walked through the park at twilight, the air crisp, leaves stirring softly in the breeze. Families laughed in the distance, their joy cutting into her solitude, yet reminding her that life moved on. She sat on a bench, her hands folded in her lap, watching the sky fade to dusk. She whispered, "I'm still here," her voice steady, no longer broken. Her chest ached, but beneath the pain was resilience. She was not who she once was, but she was not lost either. The betrayal had changed her, but it had not destroyed her. She breathed deeply, letting the night air fill her lungs like hope. As darkness deepened, Emily returned home, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. She paused at the door, glancing back at the world she once thought she needed. Inside, the silence embraced her, no longer suffocating but strangely comforting. She whispered, "I don't need them," the words falling into the quiet like a promise. Her strength was not in those who betrayed her, but in her ability to endure, to survive. She carried her scars like armor, proof that she had lived through heartbreak and found herself on the other side. The night was hers now, not Daniel's, not Sarah's, hers alone. That night, Emily sat by the window, the city lights shimmering below like distant stars. She picked up her phone, scrolling to Olivia's number, then Mark's, then Daniel's, each one a ghost of her broken past. Her finger hovered but never pressed. She placed the phone down, her hands trembling as she whispered, "I've been alone all along." A tear slid down her cheek, but her lips curved faintly, not in joy, but in strength. The betrayal had destroyed her past, but it had also carved a new future, one she would face alone, scarred but unbroken. The night closed around her, heavy yet liberating, the final silence echoing louder than words.